There is a garden, there is a city, and there's a kingdom of God. And it is beautiful, and he is bringing it right now into our midst.
When Mother's Day is celebrated, I think about a lot of the other women that have sometimes been like a mom to me. My mom passed away when I was really young, so there were a lot of other women, teachers, my aunts, that really stepped up and they loved me well, and they gave me a lot of guidance.
I couldn't agree more. I feel the exact same way. I loved my mom dearly growing up, but I also had many teachers I feel completely blessed to have known and who truly impacted my life so much that it led me into the education field, where I became a teacher and really looked forward to hopefully impacting other children's lives. For women that have really impacted my life is also been my three girls. They have taught me so much more about who I am and who I want to be as I grow older. I just feel like obviously we never stop learning.
I'm just so grateful for God's provision, and I'm excited to hear some of these stories.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today and being a part of this. We're here today, we're trying to celebrating women and talking about ways that they've impacted our life, and I was hoping you could share with us a way that somebody has impacted your life.
My grandmother, her name was Mary Solomon, and she used to take me when I was a very young child to the library, and we spent hours in the library. She taught me to love reading. She read to me when I couldn't read and helped me to learn to read. And I became a teacher because of that. I wanted to teach children to read. But she also was the one constant in my life. My parents divorced when I was young, and my grandmother was always there for me.
I would think it would be my mom, even though my mom's not here any longer. Some of the things she's instilled in me from little on up, all the way to her death, just changed my viewpoint, empowered me as a woman.
My wife, Natalia Yili, the most impactful woman I've ever met. I am forever in debt for her saying I do 7+ years ago. Not only am I in debt for that, but I'm in debt for her giving me my two miracles, which are Jonas and Noel.
My wife, Eunice Yancey. Yeah.
And what makes her so special? How has she impacted you?
Well, she's got to deal with me, so I think that's probably the top thing. We've been together since college. I met her in the college bookstore way back in the day, and she's making sacrifices for myself and my children, always pushing us to go forward, not being complacent about things.
Do you have somebody that's been very special in your life? You don't? How about Mommy? Is Mommy a special person? Why is Mommy special?
Because she's nice.
Because she's nice? How is she nice?
Because she gives us stuff, even treats. And that's gonna wiggle.
No, it won't wiggle. Is your Mommy special? She is.
I would say my mom. She's just the most selfless person. She keeps encouraging me and continues to teach me new things about being a mom now that I'm a mom of 2 kids, and she just inspires me to be a woman of God.
My mother and my grandmother, I'd say equally, they were super hard workers. They provided for their families, and they did everything they could to make us happy.
I would say long term, maybe my mother-in-law has had a great impact in my life.
My mom has just been someone who's just full of love. She's a prayer warrior, and I think the thing that I really love about her the most is she's constantly praying for me and texting me and letting me know that I'm being prayed for. Cultivating that sense of prayer early on in life. And sometimes she talks in King James language. She'll say things like, "Glory be unto God." And I'm like, Mom, no one talks like that. But I shortened it. I put a little acronym, G-Bug, glory be unto God. So now when we text, it's like, G-Bug. G-Bug.
She sounds like a true gift.
Yeah, I love her so much.
I could just imagine his mom trying to raise him. Hey, welcome everybody on Mother's Day. You know, when it's cloudy and rainy out there, I just tell our worship team, they got to kick about another 10 to 20% up just to raise your spirits. How you guys doing with that kind of weather out there? You doing okay? Yeah, God's here. God's here. So moms, lots of different moms, lots of different situations that you're in. We just want to welcome all of you and hope that all of you will find something for today. And not just moms, but for all women who are in all kinds of roles of influence. But let me just mention there are types of moms. There are single moms, which has already been alluded to. And there are blended family moms. Wow, what a challenge that is, isn't it? Having a blended family. There are adoptive moms who were able to and had the privilege of adopting kids. There are future moms, not yet moms, but they hope they will be one day. There are right now pregnant moms. I'm curious, are there any pregnant moms in the room? Just give a little shout out. Any? Okay, no pregnant moms. There are first-time moms. Congratulations if you're a first-time mom. There are second-time moms. There are third-time moms. I think about then you start to be the kind of mom that says, what in the world was I thinking kind of mom. We have empty nest moms here today. We've got waiting for the grandchildren moms. And we have all of the above, and they're called maxed out moms. Hey, I think you guys know I've been doing a little bit of reading over the last couple of years, studying about American presidents, and there's a little book of letters written from John Adams, our second president, to his wife Abigail, and these are covering their whole history long before he was president. And actually, he was one of the people at the First Continental Congress as they are planning out what are they going to do about becoming a new nation, and things are risky and tough, and he had to leave his wife Abigail back home in the Boston area, raising their 3 kids, taking care of their entire estate, but he was really concerned, and so he in one of his letters, this is dated in July 1974, the last words for this letter, "For God's sake, make our children hardy, active, and industrious. For strength, activity, and industry will be their only resource in this time." Isn't that amazing what he was enjoining Abigail to do about their kids? Now, 2 months later, as things are deteriorating, he is just understanding how difficult and how perilous the condition is of the United States. He writes another letter where he gives a little more just reflection for what he wants her to do for their kids. So listen to this, moms. The education of our children is never out of my mind. Train them to virtue. Habituate them to industry, activity, and spirit. Make them consider every vice as shameful. Fire them with ambition to be useful. Make them disdain to be destitute of any useful knowledge or accomplishment. Fix their ambition upon great and solid objects, their contempt upon little frivolous ones. It is time, my dear, for you to begin to teach them French. Every decency, grace, and honesty should be inculcated upon them. Man, I taught the moms today, and they're happy if they can get their kids to clean up the room. But I just was really struck by that, knowing the times in which they live, it was incumbent upon especially women to do the very, very best they could to help the kids become all that they were meant to become so that they could have the best possible chance of surviving in that season of life. Well, we're going to look at a passage today that is about a pretty striking time in the history of the Scriptures, and the book of Genesis has come to a close. And as it has come to close, the people of Israel, they're still a relatively small group of people. They are now at home in a foreign land called Egypt. Joseph is a man in high honor and high regard. The whole people of Israel are esteemed by the Egyptians. And so now they begin to live for decades and decades, and actually quite a bit of time after that. And eventually there comes a season where there is a new Pharaoh who knows nothing about the old relationships with Joseph and the people of Israel. And he has a very, very different perspective on these people of Israel. And this perspective is unfolded in Exodus chapter 1. And so from the very beginning in Exodus chapter 1, we start to see that this new Pharaoh, and in fact the Egyptian people themselves, they are concerned about the growing power of the Israelites. And they decide that if these Israelites become too numerous, they may align themselves with our enemies, and we will be powerless against our enemies and these Israelites who are here among us. And so what they decide to do, it is a dumb decision, but they decide that they're going to subjugate these Israelites who have been nothing but a blessing to the people of Egypt. And they're going to turn them into hard labor, forced labor, slave labor. And we read over and over that they treated them harshly. They treated them ruthlessly. They made life so very, very hard for them. Now, in that context, we begin to see the story of 5 different women. It's pretty striking in the book of Exodus that the first 2 chapters open up with focusing on 5 extraordinary women, or maybe I should say it this way, 5 women who maybe they were ordinary, but they were willing to do extraordinary things. And without these 5 women, there would have been no Moses. Now, the rest of the book of Exodus is going to be about Moses, but the author takes the time to make sure that everybody knows that without 5 women influencers, there's no Moses that would wind up doing the wonderful things he did. And so these first 2 chapters are about these women. Now, what I'm going to wind up doing is I'm just going to tell you a couple things about these women. I'll walk you through a few different verses, and then I'm going to draw a couple of applications from their lives, from their example, that I think will be true for probably most of us. And the first 2 women are they're known as midwives. Their names are Shiphrah and Puah. And it's really hard to sometimes know what they look like. Artists try to come up with various renditions, but they were midwives. Now, were they the only midwives, or were they just representative of a much larger number? Probably they were representative of a much larger number. But let me read you a couple of verses about what's going on, because Pharaoh has decided nothing they've done has been slowing down the birth rate of the Israelites, and so he says now he's come up with another plan. We're going to wind up having to kill some of these Israelites. And so in verse 15, the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live. Now, the midwives did something pretty extraordinary. And why this is pretty extraordinary is because they are saying this to the supreme totalitarian dictatorial power of the ancient world. There is nobody who is more powerful, nobody who is more exalted, nobody who has fewer checks and balances, nobody who has any less controls upon his authoritative leadership than the person to whom they're talking, the person who just said to them, I want you to kill the male children. So that just makes what they say extraordinary. The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. And then a little bit later, when the king calls them in and say, why in the world are you disobeying me? They concoct a little story. And I mean, I am so struck by these women that they have been given a strict command of death, and yet they refuse to listen to the greatest power of the land. Because it goes against their conviction, it goes against their values, it goes against their character, and it goes against their calling to be vessels of life. I mean, I'm so struck by the courage that somehow grew out of those convictions, out of that calling, out of that character, about their commitment for life. They were so enthralled with those values and beliefs that they were willing to defy the greatest power that could have had them killed instantly. They were willing to stand for what they thought is right. Now, ladies, listen, I know we do not live in a culture that is nearly as bad as ancient Egypt, and I know that there are struggles and challenges coming against your calling to be vessels of light, to be vessels of love, to be vessels of creativity, to be vessels of nurture, but there are so many voices out there that are always pressuring against you to sort of deny and downplay your calling to be these vessels of life. And we just want to, as the people of God, have the willingness to say, we will stand for life. Because there are people who need us. Let's be those people who are standing for life like these 2 midwives did. That's the first thing I come away with from this. Now, because of their stand for life, we read that God blessed them. God, caused their own families to flourish. But the Pharaoh now had to come up with another strategy. He couldn't get the Hebrew wives to kill the Hebrew boys, the Hebrew midwives to kill the Hebrew boys. And so now he turns to the people of Egypt and he gives this general edict to all his people. Listen, as we're doing life in the same neighborhoods, as we're rubbing shoulders, as we're going about stuff, and you find out about a baby Hebrew boy, throw the baby into the Nile. Now that brings us to the third woman in the story, and that woman is the mother of Moses. Now, her name is not actually told us in this text, but we know from other sources that her name was Jochebed. And let me just pick up a couple verses from her story in chapter 2. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. She knows that there are Egyptians all around. She knows that there are Egyptians that have been commanded that if there's a baby boy born to the Hebrews, kill him. So she had to hide him. But there comes a point when she can hide him no longer. She got a papyrus basket for him, coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the banks of the Nile. I studied psychology when I was an undergraduate. And one of my favorite courses was abnormal psychology, and we had this really thick book on abnormal psychology, and it was telling you all the different things that go wrong with the human mind. And the professor, like I think on the first day of class, he said, hey, there's two mistakes that young psychology students make when it comes to abnormal psychology. You're learning all these things, and you start to think that all your friends have these abnormal problems. And then you feel free to tell them that they have these problems, and just encourage us not to do that. Now, the second mistake, as we're reading through the stuff on abnormal psychology, he said, you start to think you have those problems as well. And he said, well, you probably do, but that's okay. We'll work it through. Women, you know those books on childhood development, fetal development, your unborn baby growing? Aren't they marvelous? Aren't they wonderful? But doesn't it also get a little scary about the number of things that can go wrong, that might go wrong, as you're reading just how wonderful this whole fetal development process is? Hey, women, think about this. If you had an ironclad guarantee that there was a 1% chance that your baby would be born with a fatal defect, would you still risk getting pregnant? Now, probably most women will say yes. It's a pretty small chance. What if it was a 5% chance? Just guaranteed 5% chance, 5% of kids with a fatal defect. Well, we'll probably start to think a little bit. What if it was 10%? Yakoved got pregnant with a 50-50 chance that her child is going to have a fatal defect called being a male. Can you imagine what it's like carrying him? Can you imagine just what she was wondering about and what was going through her life, and just the risk of being a mother, the risk of getting pregnant, just because every instinct in her is for life, it is for nurture, it is for caregiving, it is for raising, it is for giving everything that she has for the well-being of this life growing inside of her. And there's a 50-50 chance it's going to be a boy. And he's going to be prone to being discovered. And yet she took the risk anyway. And she had a boy. I want to tell you something real significant, and we a lot of times miss this. She did not give him a name. Think about that for a moment. Wasn't willing to give him a name because she doesn't know is he going to be around too long. And giving a name implies intimacy. Giving a name implies connection. Giving a name implies roots and traditions and destiny. And she wasn't able to give him a name. You can just imagine what she was living with as a woman, as a mother. And then how hard she worked to hide him and keep him safe and protect him, and giving everything she could, until it came to the point where she said, I can't do it any longer. It's just, and so I gotta let him go. But I gotta do whatever I can as I let him go. And so she makes this basket and tar and pitch, and she puts him in, and then this very place that was to be the place of death for the male kids in the Nile, she winds up, instead of having him thrown, and she gently places him in along the reeds along the bank, and just hoping, praying that maybe he might be able to live. Can you imagine what that was like for her? Well, now we come to the next woman in this story, and it's not a mother, it's a sister. And we will eventually find out that her name is Miriam. Verse 4, his sister stands at a distance to see what would happen to him. Well, I'm going to talk about the sister a little more in just a bit, but we're going to find out Sister Miriam. And is she 8 years older? Is she 10 years older? Is she 12? I mean, she's 8, 10, 12, somewhere around there. Man, this little sister is street smart. She is savvy. She is wise. She is going to do, she's got this instinct kicking to her to protect her little brother, to watch after little brother. She's got a mission in life, little brother. So she goes. I wonder what she was hoping to do. I wonder what she thought she could do. Isn't it amazing what these powerful instincts and drives and callings and commitments are in these women so far? I'm going to come back to her in just a moment. Because now we get introduced to the fifth woman in this story. Now, if there is somebody who is extraordinary and remarkable, I think they all are, but surely it's this woman, and this woman is going to be the daughter of Pharaoh. And it's going to be over the next couple of verses. Let me just read a few of these verses. Then we start to see how Pharaoh and Miriam intertwine. So Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. And she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. And they got the basket, and Pharaoh's daughter opened it up and saw the baby, and it says, he was crying. She felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, Hebrew male children, that her dad had ordered exterminated, that the greatest political authority in that part of the known world had deemed this is how all my people must act. Can you imagine what was going through this young daughter of Pharaoh? Tradition tells us her name is Abithia. Can you imagine what she was dealing with? I know what my dad has said. I know the power that he has said, but there's something inside of me that I see this crying, helpless, weak baby, and my heart is going out for him. Do you see how these women are all coming together in this story? Well, now we're back to street smart Miriam. So his sister has been standing off watching this whole thing. Can you imagine how bold this little girl is? Here she is. She's a Hebrew slave, just a little girl. And now here's Pharaoh's daughter. This little girl has enough audacity to go up to Pharaoh's daughter. I can almost imagine like tugging on her robe and says, well, should I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? Man, this is one smart kid. Let me go get mom. She doesn't say that, but so she goes and gets mom and brings her back, and the Pharaoh's daughter says to Yocheved, Moses' mom, well, listen, would you take this baby and would you nurse this baby for me? Oh, and by the way, I'll pay you to raise this baby. Isn't that so cool? What God has just done is God has orchestrated a stipend to make sure that Moses gets fed. And that stipend is going to come out of the royal treasury of the guy who wanted Moses killed. God is always at work, isn't he? God is always doing cool, unexpected, marvelous, miraculous kinds of things. And so Yocheved and Miriam take Moses back home, and they raise him for probably a couple more years. We don't know exactly how long, but it could have been 4 or 5, could have been a little bit older. But there comes a point when they have to take him back. And now, once again, can you just imagine? Yocheved let him go once in the basket in the Nile. And now she has to let Moses go, let her son go, to now be adopted by another woman of another race, to become the grandchild of the man who ordered all kids killed. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what's going through that? And she had to let him go. And it was Pharaoh's daughter who gave this boy the name Moses. Wow, what a story. What a story. What women. What influencers. What faith, what hope, what love, what courage, what creativity, what trust, what daring. These 5 women being raised up by God to make the life of this one person possible, because God wants to use that one person later. But for God to use him, he needs to bring 5 women into his life to make it possible. There are all kinds of lessons that I pull out of this. Women, listen. I mean, who am I to say this to you? It's not easy being mom, is it? It is not easy being mom. Moms worry. All right, I know you're all Christians and none of you worry. Right, yeah. No, moms worry. It goes with the territory. Moms worry. Grandmas worry about grandkids. Just worry goes with being a mom. Moms worry about all kinds of things. Moms worry, do their kids have clean underwear? Did any of you ever before, when your kids were what, did you have on clean underwear? And did your kids say, well, why are you wondering? Well, you might be in a car accident, so you need to have clean underwear on. Listen, I guarantee if your kid's in an accident, no EMT person is going to ask the question, now, before I let you into this nice, clean, sterile ambulance, are you wearing clean underwear? Well, moms, what are you thinking? That when your kid's on the operating table, a doctor's going to be looking, can you imagine this kid's mom let him out of the house without clean underwear? But moms worry about all kinds of things. Moms worry, are their kids dressing warm? Are they eating right? My mom, Matt's grandma, she worried that he would dress warm. And he's in college, and he's going to Messiah, and it's a cold winter, and I'm talking to mom, and she says, hey, is Matthew dressing warm? And I laughed. I said, Mom, I don't even think Matt owns a coat. Okay, that was the wrong thing to say to Grandma. She did not like that answer. So next time she said, oh yeah, he has his coat on, he's got a scarf, he's got mittens, he's wearing a hat and earmuffs, and all right. Moms worry. And when I was in college, mom would write letters. That was the old days when moms had to write letters. But she would write letters, and at the end of almost every letter, are you eating good? Staying warm? And at some point, moms begin to worry about who are we going to fall in love with? What kind of choices we're going to make? Where are we going to live? Is life going to hurt us in a way that mom just somehow can't help that kind of hurts? I mean, moms worry about all kinds of things. It goes with the territory. Moses was surrounded by women who worried in a careful, prayerful way about him. It's what it means to be a woman in our day. And moms, it's okay. Moms are always having to let go. Man, the women and just Yaakov had to let go. Miriam had to let go. There's going to come a point where Bithia, Moses' adopted mom, she's going to have to let go. But moms, we're just always letting go. It is so hard to let go. Oh, they say if there's two things that parents have to do, but moms know they have to do is you have to give your kids roots and you have to give your kids wings. You have to give your kids security, but you have to give your kids freedom. Which one's harder? I think it might be giving them wings and giving them freedom to soar because you don't know what's going to happen to them. I mean, I remember I graduated from college. I moved back home. I was working for 2 years, getting all the money I could save to go back to grad school. And mom and dad had a cabin down on the Susquehanna River, and I would work late at night on the Friday nights. And then I'd say, hey, I'm going to come down after work and be down there for Saturday and Sunday. And so I'm driving down to the river, down all those kind of river mountains, down to the Lake Aldred area. I'm driving down there, and mom, it's nighttime. It's after midnight, and mom couldn't fall asleep until she heard me come in bungalow. Because moms worry. And moms, no matter how old you get, they just find it hard to let go. But letting go is part of what life is all about. And the only way you let go is if you trust, right? You got to trust. Because there's all kinds of things out there that you are not going to have control over. There's going to be all kinds of things that are going to happen to the kids that you just won't be able to fix or manage or stop. It's just, that's how life is. I've got a really dear friend, known them for about 10 years. 4 children. 3 of them have turned out marvelously. Marvelously. I mean, you could write a book about how good things are going, about the things that they're doing, about the successes they're having, about the ways that God's kingdom is growing and expanding because of what they're doing. But then there's child number 4, and that child, just everything bad has happened. The child has made every bad choice you can imagine. And for years, this mom just agonized, what have I done wrong? What could I have done better? And what can I control? And how can I make this? And she's just it's been one day after time of letting go of that particular child. Moms, it is so hard to let go. It is so hard to let go. And it's part of the territory of being a mom, being a woman of influence. We have to wind up letting go. I tell you, as I read through this story, I see what I hope every mom will have, and that is faith, hope, love, courage, creativity, energy, passion. These are some pretty remarkable women that God has placed in the life of Moses. These are women who have been committed to doing what is right and doing the best they can to do what is right. Really, really deeply moved by that. And yet, moms, grandmas, women, we don't always do what is right, do we? And sometimes our best doesn't seem to be anywhere near good enough. You're going to have to be okay with that. Even when you're doing as right as you can and doing the best you can, you just have to understand it's not necessarily going to be enough. Here had Moses had all these women doing what was right, doing the best they can, and it still wasn't enough for Moses because Moses was a mess of a person. Moses grew up into an adult, and there was a wreck about his life. There was deep division, deep conflict, his identity, his image, his heritage, everything was just so messy and confused. And as an adult, he was making horribly bad decisions. And Moses' life, no matter the fact that he had women who were doing what was right and doing the best they can, Moses' life wasn't going to take a turnaround until he had a God encounter. And that God encounter was going to take 40 years to make its way into Moses. Moms, I just want to say, even when you do what is right and even when you do what is the best you can, your kids still need God encounters. They still need God encounters because the best you can do probably isn't going to be good enough. They need a God encounter. I was pretty fortunate. I had a mom and dad who loved each other. And a mom and dad who did a nice job raising myself and my brother. We had just about everything we could have wanted, but nor did we get too much that we were spoiled. Mom and dad were both thoughtful people, good head on their shoulders. We had a lot going for us. We had a bunch of perks. We were middle class, upper middle class, and like I said, we had a cabin on the Susquehanna River. We had nice vacation. We just had a lot of stuff. Just had almost no tragedy in our lives. So we had so much going for us. And mom and dad did a lot of things that were right, and they did the best they can, which was still pretty considerable. But I go up to college, and I start to make some really bad decisions. Start to make my own choices, kind of stuff that moms don't like to know about. And I tell you what, I needed a God encounter. And little did I know, but I wasn't going to have to wait 40 years for my God encounter. It was coming in about 4 months, and it was coming fast, it was coming hard, and it was coming good. And oh boy, did I need it. About 10 years ago, I'm sitting at the kitchen table with Mom. Dad had been dead for 10 years, sitting there at the kitchen table with Mom, and we're just reminiscing back about things, and Mom's getting a little misty, thinking about Dad, thinking about raising us, and Mom was pretty proud, pretty proud of how Bob and I had turned out, and she looked at me and said, "Yeah, we did a pretty good job. You turned out pretty good." And I just start laughing a little bit, and Mom says, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "Well, Mom, you guys did a pretty good job, but man, I went to college, and I just started drinking and doing drugs, and Mom." Apparently, I never told her that. Suggestion: if your mom doesn't know, don't tell her today. I said, "Mom, you did so much that was right, and you did so many things to the best of your ability, and it made such a difference, but it wasn't enough. It never is, Mom." You see, I needed a God encounter. Moses still needed a God encounter. His mom probably died before Moses had his God encounter that just completely changed his life. Moms, grandmas, aunts, teachers, women of all kinds. So many of you are doing right as best you can. Keep on doing it. But no matter how good your best is, your kids are going to need God encounters. So you just keep on praying, and you keep on trusting that God has the God encounter that they need.